Hello, and welcome to Eyes on Success, a weekly program covering a wide variety of topics of interest to people with vision loss. I'm Nancy Torpey.
And I'm Pete Torpey.
Now they can say, okay, we've got the funding to be able to pay the client's wages and reimburse the employer, and the employer does not have to pay a cent out of their pocket to be able to train the new employee. And if they're really satisfied with them, they can go ahead and hire them.
So that was great. That basically gave you enough time to learn the job, the employer enough time to get to know you and get to respect your skills level. And at the end of 3 months?
At the end of 3 months, they were very satisfied with what I did. And yeah, they went ahead and hired me. You know, it was so exciting to be able to finally get a job of my own.
And today's show is about our guest story about how she overcame some of the hurdles of being visually impaired and trying to find employment.
We'll speak with Ulysses Harmony Garcia about her successful path landing a rewarding job. But first for our tip of the week. This week's tip comes from Ulysses Garcia.
What I would recommend is there are a couple of options if you want to establish like a financial future. One is the individual development account. So if you're like interested in a small business or education or a first-time home purchase, you can look at those. I believe every state has an IDA program. In addition, there's also an asset building program that can help you, things like with getting a credit builder loan or a secured credit card. And those can also help build your credit so that you can use them long-term should you need to.
Great advice. And that can be a real stepping stone to other ventures.
Yeah, it's something I wish I had done a long time ago, and I wish I'd known about it sooner. But now, of course, things have gotten better, and now you can get your credit report in Braille, for instance.
Support for Eyes on Success is provided by
Envision Glasses, a smart glasses solution that helps visually impaired people read text, recognize objects, make video calls, and much more. Information and demos are available at CSUN booth number 1011 or at letsenvision.com/glasses.
And by
aphconnectcenter.org, empowering people toward independence and success by providing blogs, information, and resources for individuals of all ages who are blind or visually impaired. Information and referral line are at 1-800-232-5463.
You are listening to Eyes on Success. Success, 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 success.
Let's start by meeting Ulysses.
Hi, my name is Ulysses Garcia. My pronouns are she or they. I'm currently working with a company that hires instructors and public relations associates and admins and things like that. And we pretty much teach a variety of different topics, including music, voice, singing, and we have 2 physical locations. I am 27 years old. I live in the beautiful green state of Portland, Oregon.
And what is the status of your vision?
I am completely blind and started losing some hearing at around age 7 or 8. So I still relatively have good understanding of language and things like that. I have an older brother who is 2 years older than I am, and he is deafblind like Helen Keller and pretty much doesn't have the kind of communication that I have, although we've been working a little bit on that.
Our focus topic for today is how you were able to get your current job. But you've had a wide variety of experiences. What are some of the other jobs you've had?
Apart from the company that I work for, I've also done some independent work on my own. For example, starting a blog in 2013 after I graduated school. I took lessons in Linux development and things like that in 2017. So I kind of switched over my blog there. And then I have started thinking about writing like a memoir or different kinds of books that I might want to traditionally publish someday in case self-publishing didn't work out for whatever reason. So that's pretty much what I do in a nutshell. So the company I work for is Your Lessons Now, and that's how I got in touch with you guys.
I assume since you're teaching music, you are also a musician.
Yeah, I have about 15, 20 years of self-taught music skills. In 2002, I got a keyboard, and then I kind of gave up for a while, but I kind of went back and visited that again because I was just bored and I wanted to try something. So I was kind of glad I got that keyboard for present. And from that point on, I started kind of, even as I was losing some of that hearing, I was still enjoying music, and I still have, that perfect pitch.
And now you have a job where you get to share your love of music with others.
Yeah.
Support for Eyes on Success is made possible in part by our corporate partners.
Find out more about partnership opportunities by sending an email to hosts@eyesonsuccess.net.
This week's focus topic is how Ulysses was able to get her rewarding job that she has now.
Before we get into some of the details of your life and the obstacles you've had to overcome in terms of being a member of several groups that are underrepresented and of which people have certain biases and prejudice about, I thought maybe you could tell us, as a person who is blind and hard of hearing, what assistive devices you make use of in your daily life.
Yeah, so when I was in school, I started out using an analog FM system, which is basically a device paired to your hearing aids via a telecoil. It communicates via radio frequencies. And on a side note, I'm a ham radio operator, KJ7ERC is my call sign. So I kind of had an understanding of how neck loop inductions work. So I started using that at first, and then when I graduated, I got my very own digital FM system. Nowadays, everything is digital and Bluetooth. So you don't really need to worry about using an FM. Although, if you're going to a venue, it's very nice to know that they have assistive listening devices, which has really helped a lot, because if you're in an auditorium and you're trying to listen onto the speakers, very echoey, there's a lot of reverberation, and it makes it very difficult to hear what's going on. So I also use a screen reader. I use NVDA with, right now I'm using speech, but sometimes I will use a braille display. I know that's kind of unhealthy, but I do have the volume pretty high for what I'm able to do. But yeah, sometimes I will use a braille display or use the speech. My screen reader to follow along with text or stuff like that. I mostly read e-text audio. I know a lot of blind people say, I don't like the screen reader since they're reading me. But I prefer it because I can read along with the spelling. I can check the spelling. I can learn how things are pronounced. I can do a whole bunch of things that I wouldn't be able to do with a narrated audiobook.
Well, the digital world has opened up a myriad of possibilities for us these days, and it's nice to be able to have some choices. And it sounds like you certainly use a mix of different technologies depending on the task at hand.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm using as far as assistive technology. I've done a tech assessment in 2006 for one of the blind schools, and kind of determined, okay, these are things that you can use. You have a computer, a note taker, of course now it's the iPhone, and of course, the audiologist did the hearing stuff. So both of those things can work together. In fact, I did a presentation in 2011 to kind of show teachers of the visually impaired how you can pair these devices together and be able to communicate with teachers instantaneously. Because before I had to think all of my assignments at the end of the day and then email them the next day. Well, I figured out maybe there's a bit of a easier way to do that. So that kind of helped too.
You sound very tech savvy. Can you give us an idea of your educational background?
Yeah, I went to mainstream school from 1999 to 2012. This is K through 12 education. I did a couple of summer camps through the Oregon School for the Blind and the Washington State School for the Blind in between, 2004, 2007, kind of that area. And then I did some extracurricular activities in high school, especially when I found out they were going to do The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is one of my very favorite musicals. And so I was excited to be able to participate in the sound crew. So I got to operate the soundboard and understand things like even with my hearing loss, I will understand like the gains and the preamps and stuff like that. But yeah, and then after I graduated, I went to a 10-month transition program, which helps blind people kind of develop more responsibility in independent living and career exploration and things like that. So yeah, I mean, everything I do is pretty much self-taught and things that I read online.
And after all of that training, what happened when it came time to look for a job?
So when I initially kind of went back and forth, do I want to go to school or do I want to get a job? So I thought about maybe going back to school, but there were some political issues that I kind of struggled with that made me hesitant, which I don't really want to get into for the podcast. But then I went into some financial hardship 5 years ago, and I thought, okay, well, maybe getting a job might be a good idea. And I knew I could do a lot. I knew I could convince somebody that I could not have these talents and skills. Maybe I just need more training on how to do them specifically to their expectations.
And what kind of training did you get subsequent to that?
So what I ended up having to do was, well, kind of back up, because getting that kind of job required me to take certain steps. So maybe it would be like, okay, so first I opened the case with vocational rehabilitation, the Oregon Commission for the Blind. And I told them I'm interested in maybe getting a job. So in 2016, I took a couple of classes in things like meal preparation, woodworking, hands-on. It's more like to develop your hands-on skills than to, turn into a cabinet maker. That's what it's designed for. And then I did a tech assessment where they taught me how to use like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Outlook over like a 4-week period. Yeah, so that's the kind of training I initially received before getting my job.
So it sounds like basically they were teaching you a lot of life skills as well as skills that would be useful in potentially looking for a job.
Yeah, correct.
Did you find this helpful?
I did, yeah. I think it was very useful to know, Microsoft Excel, for example, because I use Microsoft Excel a lot in my job, especially now with Google Sheets. I was able to transfer those skills that I learned there. And even if I forget something, I have like a sheet to be able to think like, okay, these are the commands that I need to do if I want to merge something from one spreadsheet to another.
In your introductory note to us, you mentioned that the Oregon Commission for the Blind got very proactive and creative in helping you land your first job with a company that maybe might have had some reticence about hiring somebody who was blind and hard of hearing.
Well, yeah, I mean, before it was, because 10 years can make 10 years plus COVID can make a big difference in finding a job and being more creative. I mean, before that, they wanted more of a focus on traditional jobs or mainstream jobs, or maybe before that, they wanted blind people to not focus on blindness-specific jobs because, there used to be this piano tuning school where I learned how to tune pianos, but then they had to go out of business because not many blind people felt like there was a need for blind people to do more blindness-specific jobs. They wanted to do more like mainstream jobs. But now they come around and they are starting to really work with people from various marginalized communities and being more creative in their funding, because now they can say, okay, we've got the funding to be able to pay the client's wages and reimburse the employer, and the employer does not have to pay a cent out of their pocket to be able to train the new employee. And if they're really satisfied with them, they can go ahead and hire them.
How long did they continue to pay your wages?
So that's 3 months.
So that was great. That basically gave you enough time to learn the job, the employer enough time to get to know you and get to respect your skills level. And at the end of 3 months?
At the end of 3 months, they were very satisfied with what I did. And yeah, they went ahead and hired me. It was so exciting to be able to finally get a job of my own.
Did they suggest this employer, or was this an employer that you had in mind? How much help and how many contacts did they have?
Yeah, let me tell you about that because it was interesting. My job coach was trying to find just the right business for me to work with because, I was very hesitant about working with mainstream jobs. But I'm part of a choir, an all sort of LGBTQIA related choir. And I found out one day that they were going to have this presentation by a company about a vocal workshop. And so I asked them at the end of the presentation, if there was any possibility that they could hire me, because I heard them say, I hire people sometimes. And they said, why don't you go and send me your resume and I'll take a look at it. And if there's anything that, we like, we'll contact you for an interview. So I went ahead and did that. I also asked them some basic informational interview questions, like what is the most help that you need right now, and how can I support you with that? So it's a two-way street. I sent them my resume, and then they could look at it, and then also kind of ask them what they would really like support with. So I went to that interview with my job coach, and we kind of talked back and forth. And, they asked me questions. I asked them questions. My job coach asked them questions. And in the end, it was a really good job fit, because I thought about, starting my own business, and, I had the resources and stuff like that. But I realized, there's already a company that's doing this exact same thing.
So they really did shepherd you through the process and help you pretty aggressively find a job as coaches.
Yeah. Or a job developer. Job developers are like more of the, they actually do the research. They develop your resume, they contact businesses, and then the job coach does the actual coaching.
Had this employer had any experience hiring visually impaired people in the past?
They have not, although I think they have taught people who were blind.
I'm curious what kind of reaction you had on your job interview then, if this was kind of a first for them to think about hiring a blind employee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My job coach recommended that they do a disability awareness training, so they could talk to them about blindness and hearing loss and things like the HKNC, Helen Keller National Center, and the resources available to them.
Oh, wow. That's very useful to train the employer in terms of how to make the interaction go smoothly. What a great idea.
Yeah, they did that during my internship, actually. So,
and it sounds like, in addition to everything that the Oregon Commission for the Blind did and your job coach did, you're very proactive, and you came up with, let's see if I can make this happen. And I'm sure that was a big help too.
Yeah, it was, because it took a little bit of networking. Obviously, something I learned. I was actually a part of a job networking club, and they told us networking is a really big help. I volunteered so much, and I wanted to work for the places that I volunteered at, but never could. But luckily, I knew people who did those kinds of things. So I kind of said, okay, I can try to ask for support in finding these resources, and I was able to do that. So because I'm so good at, stuff like that, they decided to hire me as a public relations associate. So that kind of helped build those relationships.
And during your internship, was the Commission for the Blind still involved in coaching and monitoring and things like that?
Oh, yeah, definitely, because they were the ones paying for my wages, so they had to do that. Yeah, and get feedback from my employer, of course. Make sure it was a good job fit, but it was good.
Were there any big roadblocks that you had to overcome? And this was your first job, their first experience with a blind person?
Actually, no, because I've had summer jobs before. I've had a couple of summer jobs in 2010, 2011, 2012. First one was at a meal preparation set up at a restaurant in a hospital. The next two summer jobs were at the Commission for the Blind's Tech Center. So I kind of helped with basic web design and stuff like that. But those weren't really as involved as the 3 months work experience or internship. Yeah, it was definitely a new experience, but also very helpful too. And even before that, I was actually got to do a temporary job as a phone banker, because I've got experience from volunteering my time to be a phone banker and raise money for an organization, or help people, asking people to vote for a specific measure.
And, you kind of went past this pretty quickly, but all of those experiences as a volunteer, as a summer job, that's a great experience in terms of not only learning how you're supposed to act in the workplace, but in terms of having other people learn your capabilities and enabling you to ask them for recommendations. There's nothing like a good recommendation to help you get your next job.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good thing, because I'm actually looking for a couple of mentoring jobs. If I can mentor other people maybe in, other teenagers, for example, who are in the community and are wanting to get more support, I could get a reference from my employer about what, my skills are and things like that. So that can be really helpful too, because I actually completed a leadership training program 2 years ago.
Well, just seeing the success of someone like yourself can be really motivational and inspirational to other people. If they don't realize what can be done despite some obstacles that might be placed in your way, then they don't know what to strive for.
Yeah, they don't. And it's unfortunate because I've been on social media, I've seen all these posts, and after I've gone through what I've gone through, I said, okay, I'll give you my suggestions. This is what worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you. So, that's why I started a blog, because I said, okay, I had this great experience. I'd like to share it.
It's also nice that the Commission for the Blind didn't have you kind of typecast into these typical blindness jobs, call center, protected work environment, and other jobs like that they really were looking for real employment as a sighted person would have looked for themselves.
Yeah, sometimes, it used to be like that. It used to be, and I still wanted to do like piano tuning, for example. And I knew even with my hearing challenges, it was going to be hard to be able to tune certain parts of the piano. But I'm still glad I learned that, because at my job, when we opened up 2 physical schools, and one of those schools is in Vancouver, Washington, which is not too far from where I live. And I got to go there and tune some of their pianos.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about your blog and what it contains, what it talks about?
Yeah, so my blog is sensation-experience.com. I got that idea from reading an article about autism. Not heard of Carly Fleshman. I know she was pretty famous when she found her voice. But I've always wanted to know if you could actually be in their shoes, if you could actually feel what they felt. And I call it sensation experience, because if you could experience what someone else's sensations were, you could experience like mindfulness, for example, meditation. Those kind of things can help you be more perceptive to what's around you in the world. So my blog right now contains a myriad of different topics, but more or less try to come up with ideas on how to integrate sensory related experiences and events. And for example, my skydiving adventures. I've done skydiving, I've done all these interesting hobbies, and I try to write them as detailed as possible. Like I try to write them as if, so if you were reading it, you'd feel like you were there. Like even if you didn't have a recording of it.
I assume this skydiving experience was tethered to somebody else who had done it before.
Yeah.
And I understand you've written several books.
Yeah. So in 2009, I went on a plane ride. It was the very first plane ride I can remember, because the first one that I went on, I could not. I was very little and I didn't remember it at all. But I was excited to be able to fly for the first time, and I wanted to share that experience with other blind people. Like, what if they had never gone flying before and they were wanting to know how it felt or what they'd have to do? Nobody ever told me what I had to do before going to the airport or, whatever. I tried reading online and stuff like that, but I didn't have internet, at the time. So I ended up writing a book about your first flight, which kind of goes through the basic steps from a blind person's perspective of what you would expect to go on a plane, how it feels, the different sensations, again, what you would experience. So that one book I've written. The other one I wrote in 2012, I kind of wrote like a DIY guide of how to tune a piano. So like maybe you got a piano at a garage sale and it sounded horrible and you wanted to tune it and you didn't know how, or maybe you were interested in it, but maybe you could get a book and read about it and then say, okay, I guess I could do this. It's not meant to replace like hands-on instruction or even getting like a traditional piano tuning course. It's more just the way to begin, like a quick start guide, for example. And then one of my teachers, the visually impaired, asked me to write up like an autobiography, which I did. And then a couple of years ago, I visited it again after a couple of unfortunate events in my life. And I kind of went back and expanded on it and turned it into like a fully fledged memoir, which I'd love to get published soon. But I would like to publish that memoir so that I can try to maybe help my older brother improve his quality of life.
As you could tell from what she just told you, Ulysses has devoted a lot of effort to sharing her experiences with others who might learn from them. And we are very glad she offered to come on Eyes on Success so our listeners could hear what she had to say about her ultimately successful job search.
You are listening to Eyes on Success. Success, 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 success.
Now for this week's final item, how to learn more about Ulysses Garcia's work and how to contact her.
You talked about several of your books and your blog. First, can you remind us where your blog can be found?
Yeah, so my blog is at www.sensation-experience.com.
And where can your books be found?
My books are available on right now on Amazon, CreateSpace, or Kindle Direct Publishing, on Smashwords. And I believe I have a link to my blog to those books as well. And I have a Readly profile. So Readly is like a marketplace for authors to connect with professionals in the book publishing industry.
And if people had a question for you, how would they reach you?
They can contact me by email at ulysseshgarcia@outlook.com, or in a contact form, which I'm working on getting set up on my website. But they can use that too.
And how do you spell Ulysses H. Garcia?
So Ulysses H. Garcia is ULYSSES Garcia, GARCIA, at outlook.com. There's one thing I want to mention real quick. So I did publish a Braille music course on Comtech USA.
And how would people get that?
So you could go to comtechusa.net. That's COMMTECH USA.net/courses/pro-audio. That's where it's located right now. And people can buy it. And it's a self-study course.
And as usual, you can find all of that contact information in the show notes associated with this episode at www.eyesonsuccess.net.
That's it for show number 2209. Next week on Eyes on Success, we'll be talking about the benefits of hiring people who are blind or visually impaired. Welby Broaddus is an active advocate for employment of the blind and visually impaired. We'll speak with Welby, who is visually impaired himself, about his new book that serves as a handbook for educating business owners, executives, and human resource professionals on the benefits of hiring individuals who are blind and visually impaired. And he lists quite a bunch of benefits that companies can get from hiring people with vision loss.
So if you want to hear more about the ins and outs of employment for the visually impaired, tune in next week. Catch you then.
You've been listening to Eyes on Success, hosted and produced by Nancy Goodman Torpey and Peter Torpey.
You can access the full archive of previous shows, subscribe to the podcast, and much more by going to our website, www.eyesonsuccess.net. If you have questions about anything you've heard on the show or have suggestions for future shows, send an email to hosts@eyesonsuccess.net.
Thank you for listening and have a nice day.